Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Julia Moraes. Welcome to the stage. How you doing, girl?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Well, pleasure's all ours. Before we actually dive in deep into the your company and what you guys been doing, I just want to kind of peel back a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your journey?
Sure. So I'm originally from Brazil, was born in São Paulo, lived over there up until the age of 14, so 2001. And then that's when we moved with my family, my parents and my brother, over to Copenhagen in Denmark. My dad was transferred to work there. So, as a 14-year-old, kind of didn't have any choice and went along. And then I was there for about 10 years-ish. During this time, my parents actually moved over to Minnesota, but I was still in college in Denmark, so I decided to stay. But I would come to Minnesota, during vacations and holidays and so on. And then during one of those trips, I met the person who is now my husband, who is originally from Chile, but he was living in Minnesota at that time. So we started dating. And then once I graduated from college, we moved to Chile to be together. We got married and we were living in Chile for a while. We always thought about moving back to the US, especially my husband, because he lived in the US for many, many years. But we always thought that it would be difficult or something that would be really far off, because of visa things. Mm-hmm. But then one day he came home and he said that he had an opportunity with his job to move over to San Francisco. So we took the opportunity and we moved over here almost 6 years ago now. And we've been here ever since, and now have 2 kids along for the ride. And yeah, it's been fun.
Well, wow. From Brazil to Denmark to Chile and then over to San Francisco. Now, that is, your passport is definitely stamped up if that was the case, right?
Yeah.
Like, national melting pot right there. So tell me, from being in all these places, obviously Brazil is your home and stuff where you're from, but like, what has been like one of the best places to actually live in?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I feel like looking back at my journey, every place was perfect for that time in my life, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think Denmark was amazing, even though it was obviously very different than Brazil. And, in the beginning, it took a while to get used to that new environment, but it was perfect for my, late teenager, early 20s life. There's a lot of freedom. Obviously, there's very low crime rate. So, and I was living by myself because my parents had moved to the US. So I felt very free and safe to live on my own and to go out and do whatever I wanted. There was a lot of support from the government for students. So I would get paid to go to university. So for me, for that time, it was perfect. And then the same thing when we moved to Chile, it was getting used to a new environment all over again, but it was perfect for the time when we lived there. I got to learn Spanish and get adjusted to a new language and start my professional career. And then now living in San Francisco, the same thing. I feel like now as a parent, I see things differently. I prioritize things differently. So I don't know if I can give you a specific answer. I feel like each place I lived in was perfect for that time in my life.
And how do you feel like with all the traveling, like being influenced by various different cultures? Like you said, you learned Spanish. I'm assuming Portuguese was your first language.
Yeah.
From English. Do you still know Spanish? You still speak it?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I'm assuming, do you use it at the company?
Yes, sometimes, depending who I'm dealing with. If they're from Latin, then usually I do speak a lot of Spanish at work.
Wow. So and so how many languages do you know? Is the question
now. So Portuguese, English, and Spanish. And then when I lived in Denmark, I learned Danish as a second language, I guess. But I haven't spoken since I left 10 years ago, so it's pretty rusty.
Well, I'm assuming if you actually, got back to it or you're around the individuals, it would definitely come back. Now, being a part of various different cultures and being, seeing the world, how has it influenced you when it comes to your job? Talk to me about that.
Oh, so much. I think it has given me exposure to so much culture, and I pride myself in knowing a lot about cultural sensitivity and acknowledging that exists, and just being interested in people and their stories and where they come from, because I've been lucky enough to experience all types of things. Brazil and Denmark and Chile, they're all very different places. And when I lived in Denmark, I also went to international school. So I went to school with people from all types of backgrounds. So that has influenced me at work in the way that I always look for jobs that have to do with me working with people that, it's like a multicultural company. And then just the way that I do business with people. So I am very mindful of people that are from cultures where they like to do small talk and where that's important before we get into a subject. So Latin America, for example, that's a clear thing. Like, you would never go up to someone in Latin America and just be like, hey, can you do that for me? Or ask the question directly. There has to be that pre-conversation, like, hey, how are you? How's your family? How's it going? Establish that before we move on. Whether people from other places, let's say, some places in Europe, for example, and even the US, people are a lot more straightforward. They kind of want to get to the point. So in my career, I have been very mindful of those differences. And then also just, being mindful of, people's traditions and where they're from, and things that they might be dealing with. If there's some things happening in the world, just being mindful, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you do at Cisco? I know the listeners are definitely interested in finding out a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Cisco, we work with basically networking hardware. Basically, that's, the gist of it. And then my department is the product enablement department, where we enable partners and customers on the Cisco products. And up until about 2 months ago, I was a regional strategy operations lead for Latin America. So Latin America was my focus. And basically, I covered, as the title says, the strategy and operations. So I would talk a lot with the sales team on what their needs are and how our team can support them through our trainings and enablement. And then also do the operational side, which is setting up the trainings, the campaigns, deciding where the trainings would be. So pre-pandemic, we would hold some of these trainings in person. So we would decide which city we would go to, the target audience, and so on. And then about 2 months ago, I was promoted to global strategy and operations lead. So I am no longer looking after a specific region, but looking after the global operations for our team. So I do a lot of process efficiencies, see how we can do better, set up the operation strategy for the team, and so on.
Now, climbing up that corporate ladder, how did that work out for you? How did you feel about that? Being a woman immigrant coming from Brazil, coming into corporate America, climbing up that ladder. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been a process. so the reason why we moved here, like I mentioned earlier, was because of my husband's job. So he was basically transferred from the company where he was working for in Chile to the company here. So his job just kind of continued. But for me, I had to leave the job that I was working at in Chile, quit, come to the US, and then wait for my work permit. So I couldn't work for a few months and then get my first job here in the US. And to me, I was very focused on just getting started somewhere. So just getting my first job, and then kind of work my way up from there. So that's what I did. I got my first job about 6 months after moving here. Once I got my work permit, I was working at TripAdvisor. And it's funny when I look back because that was my goal, is just get one job in the US and start. And I remember the pay was $40,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you know San Francisco, that doesn't even cover rent for like a kid. So, I remember when the recruiter called me, and the first thing he said was, "The pay is 40,000. Are you okay with that?" And I was just like, "Yes."
You're like jumping on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why he opened the conversation with that, because he probably offered it to people and people realize you can't do anything with that. But I was just looking to get started. And I think that was the best thing that I could have done, because, yeah, it gave me exposure to what working in the US is like. It just got my foot at the door. And then after a couple of years there, after I had my first daughter, I decided to transition to another role. And that's when I went into Cisco and started working there, and then just slowly made my way up. And then I was at my current role covering LATAM for 3 years. Mm. So it's not something that happened overnight. I feel like what I see these days is that people want instant gratification and they feel like they need to be promoted right away. But for me, it's just patience and just hard work, just showing that you're doing your best, going above and beyond, being proactive. And one day that's going to pay off. And I feel like that's what happened to me. Just continuous hard work. And fortunately, I was able to get promoted a couple of months ago. So yeah, it's been a good journey with a lot of learning.
Now, do you have to, now I'm thinking about this, how you saying hard work. Do you feel that comes from somewhere else? Like, does it come from your parents? Did it come from your upbringing? How did you adapt this mindset of hard work pays off?
I think it's a mix of, upbringing and my own personality. I think in general, I'm very much a go-getter, somewhat ambitious, and I want to succeed. So I think it's definitely part of my personality, but also I've had great example, through my parents and my grandparents. My in-laws are great examples of people that have worked hard their whole life to do something better for their family and to grab up every opportunity. I think that's also key, not letting an opportunity pass by. So, I think it's a combination of both of these things.
Now, with you inclining up that corporate ladder, have you seen a lot of immigrant women like yourself, up that ladder? I know that sometimes we when you're in an environment, a corporate environment, you try to look for that individual that looks like you or probably speaks the same language as you. Have you seen that as you climbed up that ladder?
Yeah, unfortunately, not as much as I would like, to be totally honest. I think I see that there is a lot being done in that sense, but there's definitely a long way to go. I am part of a group at my work called Women of Cisco, where they're trying to empower the women at Cisco to grow and develop. And there is a very small group of Latinas, and in their leadership team, there are no Latinas. So this is something that we are trying to change. So they brought me in, and they brought a couple of other women from LATAM to try to change that. But I have not seen a lot of that currently, but I do see that changing. So I am hopeful that, you know, in the future, we will see more Latinas and just diversity in general.
Now, how do you use your voice? When did you realize that you had a voice? Being in that environment, I'm assuming when you get to some of these meetings, you look around the room, you're probably one of the very few females, if that was the case at these meetings. How do you feel about going into these meetings?
I'm not gonna lie, some of them are pretty intimidating. I have been in meetings where there have been, like 10 white guys and then just myself, and they're just like all talking on top of each other, and it's felt very intimidating. So what I try to do is just come prepared, feel very strongly about my ideas and my suggestions. I think that's, when you're prepared and you believe in the things that you're discussing, that makes you feel more comfortable to speak up.
Sure.
Luckily, I also feel that Cisco has done a great work at, advocating for diversity and women and so on. So I feel like it's a safe space. It's a safe work environment for me to speak up. And then just like things that may seem silly, but doing like a power pose or just doing like, saying to myself, I can do this before I go into the meeting. Those are helpful as well.
You better get it going.
Yeah.
Old cheerleader.
Exactly.
I could imagine, but you mentioned something very important, preparing yourself, and obviously the hard work and the discipline that you have is, kind of guide you in that direction of, having your stuff prepared. And the more prepared you are, the more people actually listen, is when you're not really well put together, you're in a position of power, position to lead. And they're like, you know what? I don't even know why we have this person leading in the first place. Sometimes people are just looking for something, Did you face any challenges on in corporate America where you could kind of speak on that you feel like, it didn't sit well with you at some point in time?
Personally, I'm lucky to say that I haven't. I don't feel like I have suffered any issues in that sense, but I have heard a lot of stories around me. So I know, it's definitely there, but I think I am pretty lucky in that sense that I have not faced that type of challenge directly.
Okay. And I know it's hard as for a lot of employees of color to ask for a raise, as a woman being an immigrant, how do you deal with that?
Oh, yes. It is hard. I personally struggle a lot with asking for what I think I deserve. And this is something that I am working on, just trying to become more confident and really advocating for what I think I deserve or that I'm worth. And this is something that I tried to put into practice once I got my promotion, that I was able to negotiate more than what they were offering me. And I did that by doing a lot of research and again, being very prepared, bringing down my, list of achievements and what I worked on and what I can bring onto the new role. And that really paid off because I did get what I wanted. So that was really nice to see that when you're prepared and you really advocate for what you want, that you can get it.
Now, obviously, you advocate for your family as well. You said 2 kids, right?
Yes, I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Now, how do you manage all of this? I know you're a super mom over here, but how do you manage, being a woman within the corporate America, having a very high position and also having your personal life as well? How do you juggle that?
Yeah, it's a struggle, and it's been especially hard the past year, obviously, with the pandemic. And my son was born just 10 days before everything shut down in March of last year. So I was home with him, and, my husband was working from home, and it was just a lot. And it's been very, very hard. There is no secret. I don't think anyone can do it all. It's about getting help and asking for help. So I think my husband and I are a great team in that sense, that if I have to go to a meeting or anything like that, he will take over, and vice versa. Or if we need to, I don't know, get a nanny to come over or something like that, or if we need to order food because I can't cook lunch that night because I'm busy with work or doing something else. So I hate that when people say, like, she does it all, or because nobody can do it all. So it's really just about asking for help. And this is something that I've learned the hard way, because I did want to do it all, but it's just impossible, and you just ended up burnout. And then in terms of work, I always make sure that my family comes first. So if I am at work and I'm getting a call from the daycare, I always stop and pick up, because my kids come first, and I want to make sure that they're okay. And this is something that Michelle Obama also wrote in her book, that her kids always came first, and she could be in any meeting or anything like that, and she would stop everything no matter how important it was. And that really resonated with me, and that's what I try to do as well. So I make it clear that my family comes first.
That's amazing that you do that, because sometimes people get lost with that. You start working these crazy hours, especially when you're in a position where you're not trying to prove a point, but you're in a position where you hard work, where you want to stay at that position, you want to keep on inclining, because it obviously works out for you and also for your family. Can you paint a picture? It's a picture in a sense where what has been like your biggest challenge being in your professional career, and how did you overcome it?
I think my biggest challenge in general, sometimes it's being 100% myself. I consider myself like your stereotypical extroverted Latina, and I just want to talk to everyone about everything, and I want to be very open. And I feel like, especially in the US, a lot of times, everything is PC, and you need to be very careful with your words. Of course, you should be in some aspects, but I feel like people are very reserved, and I am an open book, and I like to talk about everything. And I think sometimes it's hard to break through some barriers of relationship. And just have that work environment that you want. So for me, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the biggest challenge is being like navigating people and relationships, and feeling like I can be myself 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Some people will lose themselves, depending on the amount of hats that they got to wear.
Yeah.
You're like, one day you got to be this person, the next day you got to be that person. So it could get a little hard at times. And, depending on where you go with it, you definitely could lose yourself. But I'm glad that you're staying grounded. I'm glad that you're, inclining, and, obviously, again, the hard work, from your family, from you, traveling the world and seeing different cultures, has obviously influenced you at your job as well, too. I think when kind of conclude on the interview, one of the questions I want to ask, one of the last questions, being in a position of leadership in corporate America, how do you see like the evolution, over the years of how immigrants are within the community?
I am hopeful for the future. I think especially in the past year or so, there have been a lot of talks about inclusion in the workplace. In regarding to race, ethnicity, nationality, all types of things. I have seen that change starting to roll in. And like I said, I'm very hopeful and happy to see how that's going to develop coming up. I hope to see more people of color in management in management and leadership. I hope to see more women in management and leadership. And you can see, I was discussing this with my mom the other day, just in terms of like how my grandparents grew up to how I am. So like both my grandmas were stay-at-home moms and like basically didn't know anyone from their generation that really had a job. And then my mom's generation, women started going out of the house a little bit more and working. And now in our generation, that's, so much more women in the workplace. And, you can see the development there. And I think that's just going to keep growing, which is great. And, I'm excited to see that.
And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
It's a great question. I don't know. I kind of like to live in the moment and take the opportunities that are presented to me. But I would love to have a nice team at work and to continue to develop myself as a manager. I think I'm very in touch with people's emotions and feelings, and this is something I want to develop as a manager and become better at, creating connection with my direct reports and just creating a team that is great at collaborating and working together. I would love to have a couple of promotions ahead of me. Hopefully still be working at Cisco. I love the company. I love everything that they stand for. But we'll see what the future holds. Everything so far has been unplanned. So we'll see what the future holds.
Have you ever thought about mentoring? I know that you said you have a group of women that they kind of brought together at Cisco. Do you ever feel about mentoring, the younger women that are coming into the company? Obviously women immigrants as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we're actually just starting right now, a mentorship program. So it's definitely something that I'm involved in and would love to do more of. So for sure.
Okay. Well, I think that is mentoring is obviously one of the biggest things that anyone could do, in regards to when you're in an environment such as like a corporate environment, when people are trying to find out how to maneuver through corporate America, especially being an immigrant coming from a distant country, knowing that they have someone who's kind of like paved the way for themselves, for the next person. I think that's always going to be very helpful. So kudos to you guys over there for doing that. Sometimes it's just, we're going to form a group. We're going to have a couple of meetings, do a couple of things for the company. But I think mentoring is the next level to it, where you're able to actually meet with individuals and help them actually get to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Now, last thing, is there anything you want to share with the Zaka community before we conclude on our interview today?
No, just keep being yourselves, work hard, advocate for yourself, and ask for what you think you deserve.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Instead of the 40,000, instead of just going right for it, we would love to have you on next time. And we have a section in Zaka about mentoring and also having you do some possible workshops with our community. We would love to have you, embark on that with us.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I thank you again for joining us on today. To all the listeners, if you want to hear more stories like Julia, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until the next time, guys.